Max Verstappen's World Championship last year was nothing short of epic. But will he be able to defend his title, or will he go down in history as another one-hit wonder? Which driver won a championship with a team that was only around for 1 year? And which driver retired seconds after crossing the finish line? Stay tuned to find out about some of the most interesting one-time F1 World Champions. What does it take to win? A lot of world champions were only able to win one title. This shows just how difficult it is. Even if you have the right car, the right team, and the right strategy, it's still the driver who has to get the job done. The competition in F1 actually starts well before any of the drivers make it to the grid. They have to make their way up through karting, which is expensive and requires a lot of time. This is why so many drivers come from a racing background, like Max Verstappen's father Jos, who was an F1 driver. The parents of drivers have to commit much of their lives to supporting their children's karting activities, funding their career, and hoping that they will make it into a young driver program. This continues into the junior categories of racing like Formula 4, Formula 3, and Formula 2. If you're lucky enough to make it up to here, well done, but this doesn't guarantee promotion into F1. In fact, many talented F2 drivers have still not been offered an F1 seat. Unfortunately, a lot of it comes down to sponsorship, politics, and luck. So most motorsports drivers just dream of making it into F1. They know that there are only 20 seats available in the world, and they are trying their hardest to stay in it. Not everyone has the car to compete for a world championship, and not everyone who does is ready. Next, Kimi Räikkönen. Kimi Räikkönen was one of the most well-known characters around the paddock before he retired last year. He was honest, blunt, and had a troubled history with the media, but he was also once a world champion. How did he achieve it, and what happened afterwards? After a successful childhood in karting, Kimi was signed by Sauber to see how he stood up to the big league competition of Formula 1. He was very impressive. With a pretty average car, Kimi was key to Sauber finishing 4th place in the Constructors' Championship, the best results in the team's history. He was then snapped up by Ron Dennis from McLaren, and he delivered again. He finished 3rd in his debut race and 6th in the Drivers' Championship. Unfortunately for Kimi, he had come into Formula 1 at the beginning of Michael Schumacher's legendary era at Ferrari, where Schumacher won back-to-back championships until 2005. Kimi was then beaten to the title by the young Spaniard Fernando Alonso in 2005, but Kimi didn't give up, and after another disappointing season, he decided to jump ship to Ferrari. It was the very first season with Ferrari that Kimi won his one and only Drivers' Championship. It was one of the closest seasons in Formula 1 history, and Kimi edged out Alonso and Hamilton by only 1 point to claim the title. Following the 2007 championship, many commentators thought that he had lost enthusiasm. He finished 3rd in 2008 and then dropped to 6th in 2009. Not exactly a great title defense. After these disappointing seasons, Kimi decided to leave Formula 1 before returning a few years later. He bounced around between a few teams, but he was never the same Kimi. Oh, what a shame. Can you guess which unlikely world champion won with a team that only existed for 1 season? And which world champion gave up winning another title because he wasn't given enough hotel rooms? All that and more is coming right up, so don't go anywhere. Now, we have Nico Rosberg. It's hard not to miss the days of Rosberg battling Hamilton. Sure, last season was fantastic, but it wasn't the same kind of rivalry. Rosberg and Hamilton were childhood friends. They had history together. They competed in karting against each other, and then they were racing side by side at Mercedes. With changes to regulations, which began the turbo hybrid era of engines in 2014, Mercedes was able to get ahead of the competition. Both Rosberg and Hamilton had the right machinery beneath them, so who would come out on top? It was Hamilton, who won the first 2 seasons, but in 2016, Rosberg was more prepared than ever. Rosberg employed a psychologist and a mental trainer to focus all of his energy on the season, and it must have taken a lot out of him because he announced his retirement shortly after winning the title. He has admitted that as soon as he crossed the finish line in Abu Dhabi to win the World Championship, he decided to retire. Rosberg had given everything he could to beat Lewis Hamilton, and he was not prepared to do it again. Did he just want to be part of the World Champion Club? Or maybe he just wanted to win a World Championship like his father, Keke Rosberg. Keke also only won a single driver's championship, so I guess they have that to talk about. Next up is one of the more surprising champions on the list, Jenson Button. The other teams, commentators, and even Jenson himself didn't seem to believe the British driver could be standing on top of the podium at the end of 2009. Button entered F1 in 2000 with Williams before moving through Benetton, Renault, Bar, and Honda. By 2008, he had a mix of results, and it was beginning to look like he might never get the chance to compete for the top spot. Then his fortunes changed. In early 2009, Honda was bought by a team set up by former Ferrari and Benetton technical director Ross Brawn. Clever innovations like a double diffuser made the Brawn GP car faster than all of their competitors. Jenson dominated the first part of the season and won 6 out of the 7 first races. But once the other teams installed their own double diffusers, Brawn was left fighting in the midfield for 5th or 6th position. Luckily for them, they had done enough. The early results result meant that 5th place in Brazil won Jensen his first and only world championship. After this season, Button made the decision to leave Brawn and join McLaren, but it couldn't have been worse timing. The McLaren team was past its peak, and what followed were 4 years of Red Bull championships from Sebastian Vettel. To add insult to injury, his McLaren teammate Lewis Hamilton then left McLaren to join Mercedes, which had just bought out Brawn GP. We all know the rest. Mercedes had one of the most dominant eras of Formula One. I bet Jensen is kicking himself over that one. Up next, Nigel Mansell. Nigel is considered one of the greatest Formula One drivers of all time. He raced and won against some of the best of all time. He had ongoing feuds with Alain Prost, Ayrton Senna, and Nelson Piquet, but his hot-headed history meant that it is sometimes forgotten just how great a driver he was. He lacked a truly competitive car in Formula One up until he joined Williams in 1985. He was impressive and consistent there, but he had the title taken away in the last race by Alain Prost. Mansell then briefly left Williams to go to Ferrari, but returned 2 years later and had his most successful years of his career. In 1992, he hit the ground running with 5 back-to-back race wins, and he didn't slow down. He won 9 races that season and had 14 pole positions. This performance was more than enough to win him the Drivers' Championship, which was guaranteed after just the 11th race. But Mansell had been having problems with the Williams team for many years. He had many demands from the team before agreeing to return to the team in 1991, and after winning the World Championship in 1992, the relationship with the team broke down again. Apparently, Mansell wasn't happy with the number of hotel rooms the team would provide him during the season. Mansell left F1 after that for IndyCar. He returned briefly with no success and then decided to quit for good, but his place is certainly cemented in Formula One history. Lastly, Max Verstappen. Verstappen's 2021 season last year was impressive. We got to see just how good the Dutchman is, who challenged and outperformed Lewis Hamilton whenever given the chance. Max has just signed a contract until 2028 with Red Bull, so he will be hoping that they remain as competitive as they have been in the last few seasons. And with this shiny new contract comes a handsome $55 million a year. He's earning exactly the same as Lewis Hamilton. Red Bull have the money and the drive to compete at the top of F1, but will they be able to give their reigning world champion the right car this year? Or will Max fall into the category of one-time world champions? The early signs are pretty good, with Red Bull just behind Mercedes on the final day of preseason testing in Barcelona. Some champions have eras of dominance. Out of 770 drivers who have started a Grand Prix, there have only been 34 drivers' champions. Lewis Hamilton has won 6 world champions with Mercedes. Sebastian Vettel won 4 in a row with Red Bull, and Michael Schumacher won 5 in a row with Ferrari. Is this the beginning of a Max Verstappen era? Only time will tell. Do you think Max has what it takes to win more championships? Or do you think he will be happy enough with being a world champion? Let us know what you think in the comments below, and we'll see you next time.